dialogue and recording artist Patti Kilroy is a uniquely modern minded musician, most known for her stylistic versatility and her work with technology and violin and extended techniques. She has premiered over 100 new musical works, and her playing has been described by the New York Times as intensely focused. She has a rare command of extended techniques and modern performance practices, in particular with looping, live processing electronics, and prepared violin. In particular, her career in new music seeks to help correct the racial and gender imbalance in classical and new music spaces. Her programming and curatorial approaches strive to include composers and musicians who are female, non binary, trans, and of color. And she is also a member of the Executive Council for the Dream Unfinished. She's joining us right now from her home in LA. I'm in New York, so this is a very long ways away, and it's quite early there. So thanks for waking up early. And how are you, Patti?
Good morning. I'm well. I get up kind of early anyway. It's sunny here. Still cold. Mornings are cold. So thanks for um, having me today.
Yeah, our pleasure. You know, February is always a really busy month of the year. And tell me, what are you busy with right now? What's consuming most of your time?
I teach full time at Cal State Los Angeles. It is a state school in East LA. There, I direct the orchestra. I teach violin. Um, I teach a bunch of classes. So like right this it kind of depends on the semester, but this semester I teach a 116 person lecture class on world music. So like we basically hit a different region of the world every week, and so that takes up a lot of my time. Um, but also, I also teach like coach students at a high school nearby for chamber music stuff, and some concerts have started coming back, so I'm starting to perform again. I just went to Missouri to play a show with a group called Alarm Will Sound. And it was a cool concert of like a lot of like electronic music inspired work. So yeah, it's I would say it's probably like an 80% teaching, 20% performing mix at the moment. But that's mostly what I've been up to. We've been remote at Cal State LA because of the COVID-19 surge, but we're going back next week. So my past few weeks have been a lot of Zoom, and a lot of emails. So
Well, that's going to be really exciting because you said before we started that you've been out there since 2019. And how many semesters did you actually have in person
one,
before the pandemic started?
I had one semester, one normal semester, and then we started the spring, and I was super optimistic. I mean, I feel all things considering, still pretty optimistic, and I feel like everybody's like doing their best, and you just have to be gentle with folks who are doing their best in challenging circumstances. But yeah, I had one normal semester, and then everything very abruptly went remote um, in March 2020,
Wow.
and yeah, school's trying to go back, but we always have to be mindful at our institution. A lot of our students um, live in multi generational households. They commute from home to go to campus, so we just have to be mindful of that. And you know, a lot of them are essential workers. They work like maybe in the service industry, or like, and you know, they're often supporting themselves in college. So we just have to be mindful of risk, maybe a little bit more than campuses that are a little bit more, you live on campus, that is all you do.
So, can you describe the experience after living in New York for obviously, you know, before the pandemic, it was extremely busy. And then you move to California, and not only is it a completely different, I mean, sort of different way of life, just in a different coast, but also you have the pandemic. So, how did that affect you as an artist?
So I work with technology a lot. So having like being able to like set up my sound so that it sounded okay through Zoom and deal with that. And I made a lot of orchestra recordings where we did like the Brady Bunch like tile video tile sort of thing. That's all a lot of work, but it's not outside of my skill set. So it was just a lot of work. Um, but when I first moved, I mean, with any, I always wanted to play. I still want to play, even though I teach full time. I feel like teaching and performing inform each other, and I would be really sad if I was 100% teaching or 100% performing, because I feel like what you get when you do a little when you do both is more special than just doing one personally. So the performing part, it just takes time getting to know people. And the hanging out part the hanging out with musicians part in LA is a little different. I feel like people like to stay home, and everywhere is beautiful here. So it's like, why would I go somewhere else when I can just stay in my neighborhood? Like my husband and I live in Little Tokyo in downtown Los Angeles, and we have a couple friends in a neighborhood that's about 20 minutes away. And generally, that's kind of what we're looking at, like 20 to 30 minutes away sort of neighborhoods for our other friends. But most of the time, we just stay in downtown. I guess I never thought about it, but I guess I've always lived in like mostly like urban-ish areas.
That seems to perhaps inform why it is that you've chosen to do what it is that you're doing. And there's
Yeah.
something very special, um, I think, about every particular audience. And what is it about when you're performing as a part of the Dream Unfinished that makes it just so intriguing and unique?
So I got involved with TDU um, for the Sing Her Name concert, um, and I, I mean, at that time I was freelancing. And I felt like prior to my work with the Dream Infinite, like sometimes I would do like a benefit concert or two, but it would feel like very random, and so like my my I guess my politics and like the things that bothered me about just like systemic things that are just messed up and holding um like people back and causing unnecessary suffering. Like that, my feelings about that were really separate from my music. So what I really found special about the Sing Her Name concert was just the variety of folks who were involved. It was a long time ago, so I like my details are fuzzy about it, but just the variety of people involved with the concert and the experience. Like they had speakers and music, and um if I remember correctly, there was like I think there was like a premiere of a new piece, so it involved like contemporary classical music and kind of like included that world too. And there were just like so many different spaces included in this concert, which um, I don't know. I mean, like I really I get emotional in very very few concert settings, but I remember there was just a a, a point where in the concert they just projected all of these names of girls who were just victims of uh, police violence, and um, it was very powerful, and I feel like anybody that was sitting in that room was gonna be affected by that in a way that made them motivated to action. So I think that is a really powerful thing. I think it is very hard to motivate people, especially because, with with the news, it's an ongoing, like, the fatigue is real when it comes to just activism fatigue, and um eventually just getting overwhelmed with the bad news.
Yeah.
So,
But what,
oh, please.
well, what do you do with that? Especially right now, you're in a different community.
Mhm.
It's kind of going from one very diverse city to another.
Yeah.
But many of the same issues are happening here as they are there.
Yeah.
And you have many other issues that are happening there that people are not aware of. So how does that affect your work? And maybe you can speak as a teacher as well. You mentioned just the amount of diversity that your student body has.
Yeah.
But
So
how do you constantly modify that over time?
I the more I think about it, when it comes to just like programming and also just supporting the students, you like Cal State LA, for example, is 78%, I think, like if I remember the fact sheet correctly, Latinx students. So, um, and a lot of the students commute to campus. They have two jobs or more. Like, they are um, doing a lot. So, and I think our school, like, as like they pride themselves in, they got some college ranking that says that they're like number one in upward mobility of student, which is amazing. And I feel like when it comes to just access and connecting students with an education, you have to meet them in the middle and like look at them, um and get a sense of what they individually need. So there's not like a one size fits all for like every person's situation. From an educator standpoint, you just have to design your stuff with a little bit more flexibility. Like, maybe the student has a job that means that they need the weekend to complete their assignments, or maybe the student, um, uh, I'm trying to think of examples, but or like maybe the student gets behind because, I mean, this has been happening a lot. Like, maybe a family member catches COVID and they have to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you just have to be willing to be flexible in that way. And I think also designing course materials where they see themselves and they see paths for themselves. So, I mean, in the world music class, this is a pretty straightforward thing to do. We just like, and I always in the world music class try to include music from communities that exist in LA, which is
Mm.
almost like, I mean, I feel like there's a little pocket of the world and basically a neighborhood in LA. If you like, it's just such a big place, so
Yes.
you can Google like little country of choice LA and find something, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then, as a musician and as a music educator, like, just including in every concert, um, music that is like written by um, underrepresented people of color, like women, and also including performers. So again, the
Mm.
students can, see see that see like themselves, or like people that they didn't maybe see in I mean, it's in LA. I feel like they've had, like, I feel like LA, like, K-12 institutions do a really great job at like keeping programming relatively diverse. So it's not so,
Mm.
but like, that they go to college and continue to see themselves in these contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
um, I got a little sidetracked. Oh my goodness.
No,
Where
but you touched on so many good things in that, and I'm curious. Like you mentioned before, um, people have been using this term COVID fatigue, but you mentioned sort of this activism fatigue,
Mhm.
which I think is really, really fascinating
Mhm.
because, the year you're talking about with Sing Her Name, I believe was 2015, 2016 ish,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, which was around the election of Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
tensions were so high and sort of fresh for all of this craziness that we now have sort of normalized in a way.
Mhm.
And so in a sense, it there was a period of time I see that it kind of became trendy to jump on the activism bandwagon, and I think that trend has now kind of passed for many people. And how do you continuously reflect on what's happening around you? And you sort of mentioned it with your programming, and also the types of people that are performing in front of students that are representing them. Um, but in terms of that programming, like what is it that you're like? How are you continuously keeping your radar engaged with your community around you, especially in this online world? Are there maybe some student forums or groups that are talking about certain issues, things like that? Um, how is it that we continuously can stay relevant to what's actually happening around us? Um, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, at Cal State LA, it's pretty easy. A lot of like our faculty, especially like they just founded a new college of ethnic studies, so a lot of the faculty in that college are like really actively sharing and organizing students um, to just educate about issues affecting LA and just the United States that are related to systemic racism and injustice. And uh, so, I mean, I follow those folks to just get a sense, but I mean, for for me as an educator, I just instead of maybe keeping track of I do keep track of what the students are up to. I mean, like on Instagram, there are a lot of kind of student run pages,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to what actually influences my programming, and I I guess I think a little like it's not necessarily maybe what students necessarily want or what are interested in, and more that I'm interested in just showing them a range of stuff, and then I will just see how they react to it. So, for example, our orchestra program this time around is a little weird because we lost 3 weeks of rehearsal in the beginning of the semester. So I'm programming. I'm just going to I'm programming a lot of like super rhythmic music that maybe isn't technically as hard to play, but is something I think we can put together in 4 weeks that is like going to be fun for them, and also challenging, but not in a way that makes them need to like shed a ton of notes. So
Right.
we're like I'm showing them a range. Like there are pieces that are like inspired by like metal. There are pieces that are inspired by Latin music. We're like putting an arrangement of like a mariachi folk tune in there, where there's this really cool piece in the Kronos Quartet 50 for the Future collection
Mm-hmm.
that was written by this griot from um, Mali. Her name's Awakase Made Diabate, and it's great. It's like this clapping and like pizzicato sort of song, and there's like um, great documentary footage that's kind of associated with it. So I'm like really excited to show all that stuff to them,
Mm.
and put together a concert that's kind of based around those themes. So I just want to show a range, and make I don't know, make it make it as like educational and like mind opening as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
I wanted
but
to
yeah.
I wanted to jump in really quick because I'm really intrigued by that, but also I feel like what you're saying is represented in so much of what you teach with extended technique,
Mhm.
and um, kind of changing the violin pedagogy in a way, in a sense, to open it up from a very, I don't want to say beginner level, but from an earlier stage within somebody's playing, to kind of put all of these aspects of playing on an equal playing field. Um, And yeah, I'm intrigued by that 50 what is it, 50
50 for the future. It's a
50
really
50s for the future. Yeah,
incredible
50
collection of
pieces,
music.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all 21st century,
Hmm?
made for that idea.
It's a
um
beautiful collection, and it's all like completely free. I
mhm,
do find like for the Diabate piece, for example, I'm like adapting, like it's for string quartet, right? So like I
mhm,
have to go and like get the cello part and put it in the Sibelius and like simplify it to make a bass part and stuff like that. I'm happy to do that sort of stuff if it
mhm.
means more students get to have a get to have an experience. So that's like productive for them, right? But but yeah, that's a great collection. Um, and yeah, it means that like this concert, because again, I think it is a thing that we can address in 4 weeks and do a good job with, is really going to just focus on like rhythm and how to clean up your rhythm and like how different approaches to rhythm. And
Mhm.
um, I mean, I learned about that sort of stuff playing wedding gigs when I was in school. Like like a lot of the time I'm really upfront with students about like when I was in New York and I was trying to like be a freelancer and trying to make a living playing music, I had to do everything. I had to do like what like opportunities came my way and do my best with them, and um that's the way of the world these days. So I feel like if anything, the programming approaches, I mean I think it's the right thing to do also, just to show people a range, but also just from a we have like a lot of music education majors in our program. So most of the time, I mean, I encourage the music ed majors to continue performing and find opportunities to perform, because performing always influences teaching and vice versa. But um, you know, the, whatever context they are able to perform in, and the more experience they have early on, it's going to help them. Like they're going to see a tough rhythm on a page and not freak out because it's like really like like it's got like a bunch of beams and stuff. They're just going to be like, oh, okay, like what does the sound like? Okay, I'm gonna just look at it closely and not panic, and that I think is just really valuable and will serve them more in the long run than like, I don't know, hacking it at all the
Yeah,
Beethoven symphonies and stuff. Beethoven's
yeah,
great, but like,
sure.
but there I think there's
Beethoven symphonies.
yeah, but like the classical canon teaches certain skills and not others, and I
Right.
think the others, personally for me in my career, I mean, I guess I've had a little bit of a like a weird career as a performer, but those other skills served me maybe more and made my life really interesting in a way that
Mhm.
I would want for my students. If I would want my students to at least have the option to have a life like that. So
You're making such a good impact, I'm sure, on your students and everything you're saying.
we'll
That sounds
see.
amazing. That sounds amazing. I think that's totally the right direction in music pedagogy. That's wonderful. And I'm curious, what's next for you as a performer? And you're now part of the TDU Executive Council. So how do you see your role within that? And as a performer, what is what's the next step? And I don't even just mean like you could be totally selfish in this answer. Like, if you want to play like all the violin works by Bach, that's like a life goal that you have to do. Like it could be anything, but like what's next for Patti Kilroy?
So, um, oh man, that is on my to-do list, but it's like maybe when I'm like tenured and retired and have way more time, sort of goal. But actually, uh, so I like with the executive council role at the Dream Unfinished, like I just consider myself here to give advice based on my experience about rep or looking over scores like that involve string playing. I or like, I don't know, any question that I might be able to answer. And it makes me really happy. I mean, like when I moved here, I left behind a lot of my friends and colleagues that I enjoyed working with a lot. And you know, I'll go back to New York eventually to see people, but um, I was really excited to be approached about this role because it keeps me connected with something that I think was a really like powerful experience for me with an organization that I really admire, and I just think it's doing really great work. So I'm really happy to continue to be able to support in whatever role I can, even though I am now very far away. Um, and what's next for me? Well, next Monday we're back on campus, so I'm going to be dealing with that, and like, you know, just a lot of students are going to be remembering that commutes are a thing, and just like
Yes.
supporting them in the way that they need to be supported. Um, I'll start up the orchestra rehearsals again and get people back on the saddle with that, and that'll be fun. I mean, I feel very lucky in that I'm at a school where most of the kids like want to play an orchestra and genuinely enjoy it, where I feel like sometimes you hear about it being a little bit of a fight to get students to play in their required ensembles, and that is not an issue at this school. um, I do have some performances that I'm pretty excited about. I've got some shows with um, Alarm Will Sound in April, playing a really cool program called Post Acoustica, um,
Mm.
that includes like music. Like they do a lot of they I feel like Alarm really got on the map for like their covers of like electronic music, like Aphex Twin, and they've expanded it to include there's a tune called like Family Galaxy by this artist called Tim Exile. There's this new tune called by an artist called Jalen. Um, so it's kind of like heady, dense electronica stuff, which I have
Mm.
always loved. Like, but it's very I don't know. Sometimes when I say heady and dense, it's like we like it. It's still very like very accessible, and there's a groove, which is like my favorite kind of electronic music. So I'm doing that, and we have a couple shows there in St. Louis. One show in St. Louis, one show in Chicago. What else? Oh, in June, I'm premiering an opera with like I'm playing
Mm.
violin in opera or opera for like girls chorus with the San Francisco Girls Chorus, and that one's really exciting because it is a setting of a diary of a girl named Angeles Monrayo, and she is a Filipina girl who emigrated to the United States in the 20s. And so the diary shares about her experience being on, um, I think it's sugar farms in Hawaii, and then moving
Mm.
to Stockton, California. Um, and that's really special for me. I'm half Filipino, and you know, it's really interesting to be Filipino and in classical music because
Mm.
everybody assumes they'll be like, "Oh, you're really good at karaoke," and like I know a nurse that's Filipino, and you just get all of this like, and I don't know, it you don't see a lot of Filipinos in classical music, and you don't see a lot of Filipino
Mm.
composers or Filipino. Like I always would get really excited when I would meet a Filipino musician and be like, "Oh my God, you're Filipino!" Which and it's funny to me because Filipinos like music is so
Yeah.
like I mean there's a reason there's like a stereotype that Filipinos are really good at singing and karaoke and like dancing and stuff because they
They love
all
it.
yeah, they love it. And um I just remember going back. I mean, most of my mother's family is still in the Philippines, so I went there, and they just have like music nights. Like they'll bust out the guitar and sing, and they have like the magic mic, but like they all can music, so it's great. So I don't know. I'm really excited to just like that is one I think also big part that excited me about moving to California is that there are so many Filipinos here and so many Filipino
Mm.
organizations that are um, just exploring their culture because I think especially with Filipinos when it comes to just Asians and Asian American people, um, Filipinos really assimilate. Like they all like my mother never taught me the language. Well, she tried to teach me the language, but like I never really learned the language. I took some semesters of it in college, and I always just in school was like what everybody just assumes that I'm like some sort of East Asian mix,
Mm.
and I'm like no, actually like cultures are really different, and
Yeah.
I'm also trying to understand it myself. I don't so
Yeah.
it's been cool to kind of dig into it. So those are a couple things that are kind of I'm looking forward to. um
That's awesome. That
yeah.
sounds so exciting, and I'm so intrigued to follow more of what you're going to be doing. If people want to find you, where can they look?
So, I guess the most active place I'm at, I need to update my events page on my website. But my website is pattikilroy.com, and I will update my calendar because now I have things to put on the calendar again. Thanks,
Yay! It's
thanks,
2022 now.
thanks
Yeah,
2022. Like
that's right.
pushing through. I have an Instagram account where I post. I like to post practice videos and be silly there. My handle on Instagram is pretty silly. Also, it's Kitty Palroy.
Kitty Palroy.
Yeah, KITTYPALROY. Those are the
Love it.
places I think I most reliably post. So yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm I'm always down to like collaborate for stuff. So I hope that anybody that checks those out will say hi and
That's
not just
awesome.
lurk.
Awesome. Well, it's been wonderful to share this hour with you, talking about your career and your goals and your endeavors and your new role with the Executive Council with A Dream Unfinished. And yeah, so thanks so much for joining me.
Thank
And
you.
I hope to speak more with you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.